Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's Monday Zen and Zazen class. Probably Schwanzan will join in a minute. And as always, we will sit 30 minutes together. And after that, I will talk about the precious mirror Samadhi. Now we've reached the central part of the text, which is the most difficult. I try to make it not more complicated than necessary, but it's interesting. Basically, it's about the 5 ranks by Dongshan. But if you really try to understand it, it will cause you a headache. And Zen is not about having headaches. But let's worry about that after the sitting. Before that, let's sit together for half an hour. Good evening, Xuan-san. Thanks for having us here. Could you hear the bell? No. Can you hear me? Can you hear my voice? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm using a different laptop, and it could have to do with that. With my regular laptop, I have the choice to use original sound, and then there's no voice filter. And it could be because now I don't have that option, that it filters out the artificial sound of the bell. So next time I will try to fix that. Either I get my old laptop back, or I will adjust this laptop that I can use this original sound without the filter. So either way, thank you for joining. I want to continue with the Japanese. It would be Hokyo Zammai, the treasure mirror Samadhi. Let me share the screen. So this is the text we're talking about. Let me read the whole. Let me read it from the beginning. It's not too long, in English only. The Dharma of thusness. So this thing. The Dharma of thusness is intimately transmitted by Buddhas and ancestors. Now you have it. Preserve it well. And this one thing that you have now is basically this one breath that you take now, these 30 minutes that you just said, or Muho's voice that you hear in this moment. The actuality, or the manifestation of reality. Genjo Koan, Dogen would say. Now you have it. Now you encounter it. Now you're living it. Preserve it well. So don't let it slip. A silver bowl filled with snow, a heron hidden in the moon. Somebody mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe 4 weeks ago, this image of all of the snowflakes falling exactly in the right place. And later I googled for it. It's from the Hekigan Roku, or I think in Chinese Bian Lu, a koan collection. It's case 42. Layman Po, I think, or Pang, a layman is saying this. So all of you who are interested in that koan, Hekigan Roku, case 42. Layman Pang, I think in Japanese, in Chinese, layman Pang, and in Japanese it would be layman Ho. A silver bowl filled with snow, a heron hidden in the snow, in the moon. Taken as similar, they are not the same, not distinguished. Their places are known. And these two that are not the same and at the same time not distinguished, you can interpret it in many ways, but one interpretation would be the relative self, this person that has a name, a face, and the absolute self that has no name and no face. Or this day, December 16th, 2024, which is today, but at the same time also the eternal now. You can't distinguish them. They're one and the same. Where's the eternal now? It's here, December 16th, 2024. But is the eternal now the same as the date on the calendar? No. They're different, but still the same. Taken as similar, they're not the same, not distinguished. Their places are known. The meaning does not reside in the words, but a pivotal moment brings it forth. The truth is not in words, but still, depending on the situation, you can use words trying to communicate this. Move and you are trapped. Miss and you fall into doubt and vacillation. Turning away and touching are both wrong, for it is like a massive fire. Just to portray it in literary form is to stain it with defilement. And here I stopped the last time. So basically, in the case of a Zoom meeting like this, we have nothing but words to express it. Or when you ask a question later, how are you supposed to do it except for words? How can I answer without relying on words? Still, it's not in the words. Truth is not in the words, but words can also be a powerful way to convey it. And this text is basically, how do you say? The author is trying to do exactly that, although he's warning against the danger of words as well. And here starts the section of the text which I said in the beginning is very complicated. It can cause you headaches. Because here the author, and people say it's in Chinese Dongshan, or Dongshan, I think, in Japanese Tozan, starts to talk about the so-called 5 ranks. And I will, maybe before I read, I explain a little bit about the 5 ranks. In the video description, you find a link to a book that I can recommend very much. Let me, how can I move this here? Okay, here. But I can't stretch it. I can recommend this book by Ross Bolleter very much. It explains Dongshan's 5 ranks, and you also have a interpretation of the text that we are talking right now. The text that we are talking right now is here, Dongshan Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi. But before we start with the following lines, I would take a look at these gata of the 5 positions of ruler and minister, which is also supposedly authored by Dongshan, so the same author. And in this book, Bolleter is talking about contingent and essential. For those of you who can read Chinese or Japanese characters, I wrote it here on this card book. This is Tozan in Japanese, or Dongshan. Goi means the 5 ranks. So what 5 are they? With Chinese characters, you would write them like this. Please forgive me if I do the Japanese reading. Shochu hen. That's what Bolleter translates as the contingent within the essential. So for him, this sho is essential and hen is contingent. And then hen chu sho, which is the other way around, the essential inside the contingent. Sho chu lai, traditionally you would say coming out of the essential. Although Bolleter, interestingly, he doesn't say coming out, but he says arriving within, kind of the opposite. But traditionally, it means you start out from the essential and you get out of there. And then you arrive inside the contingent. And this last one would be arriving in harmony, or how does Bolleter put it? The last one is arriving at concurrence. First, let me explain a little bit. So maybe I stop the sharing for a while. Let me explain a little bit about these 2 elements that make up the 5 ranks. This one, Bolleter translates as essential. Another translation would be, well, the straight. Means straight, it means right, or it could be also the absolute. Like in the past, I was talking about absolute and relative. So if you use the words absolute and relative, this is the absolute, and this is the relative. This can also mean bend, or, well, bending to one side. So this one here is the relative inside the absolute. Or in the Heart Sutra, it would be form inside emptiness. And the second one is emptiness inside form, the absolute inside the relative. And although probably talking about absolute and relative is the most common, I find Bolletter's, how do you say, translation, contingent and essential, very inspiring, especially contingent. Although contingent, I don't know about the English. In German, you use this word very rarely, but at least in philosophy, something is called contingent if it is possible but not necessary. So, for example, the fact that today is December 16th, 2024, that's a contingent fact. It's not necessarily so, but it happens to be so. Or the fact that I'm Muho is also contingent fact. It's true, but it's not necessarily so. At least I could imagine that I was born into this world as a different person. So that's what you call contingent, while what Bolletter calls essential means it couldn't be otherwise. It has to be so. Or what I usually call the absolute. It has to be that way. For example, it's not necessary that today is December 16th. Actually, yesterday it was December 15th. Tomorrow it will be the 17th. There's no necessity, there's no universal law that says that now needs to be December 16th. But it's essential or absolutely necessary that now is now. We couldn't be anywhere except now. We could be everywhere else except December 16th. We could be on any other day meeting. When people later watch this video on YouTube, the chances that they are not watching on December 16th are very high. But whenever they are watching it, when they are watching it, it will be now. So the now is the essential. The day on the calendar is contingent. Whoever is hearing me talking right now, it could be Joseph, it could be Julian, it could be Xuan. That's contingent. If Joseph is hearing this, that's a contingent fact. But whoever is hearing that, it must be you, so to speak. Or from your perspective, it will always be me. That's essential. So these come together. And in my case, Muho and the essential me, they're always collaborating. Like snow falling on a silver tablet, like the heron hiding in the moon. They're not the same, but you can also not differentiate them. And these 5 ranks that the text will now go on to explain are, how do you say, an attempt to develop 5 different perspectives on this unity. So the contingent within the essential basically starts out with everything being part of the absolute truth, but then taking a look at the relative. So taking a look at the relative world through an absolute window, so to speak. While this is the other thing. You're looking from the garden of the absolute, but then you see this mirror, or you could maybe say the moon. You look up in the sky and you see this one moon. And the whole garden is reflecting that one moon. While in this case, you would look down from the moon on the garden. The third rank would be, well, being just on the moon, but there's a movement here. So you come out, or Bolata says you arrive there. There's movement. So it's not the absolute standing still, but movement coming out of the absolute. And this is arriving in the relative, arriving in the contingent world, arriving in the everyday world. And the fifth rank is where they're both in unity. And as I said, this can cause you a lot of headaches. Where's the time? Actually, today, I doubt I have the time to actually continue with the text because it's already 10 to 9. But for example, I have this old Japanese book here, old-fashioned book, all with Chinese characters. They try to use this, can you see this? This kind of round symbols. So this would be, for example, the relative inside the absolute, and this is the absolute inside the relative. And then some texts, this is coming out of the absolute. The absolute would be the black point in the center of the circle. And here, arriving in the relative, in this book, it's painted like this. A white circle inside a black one, and this one is kind of arriving in harmony. But then let me share the screen once more. There are some texts which do it completely different. Oops, that's not what I wanted to share. This one here, for example. Here, it's kind of symmetrical, which is nice, but the white one is arriving in the essential, and for some reason, the last one, where the relative and the absolute kind of correspond with each other, they are in harmony, this is totally black, which doesn't really make sense because the black here stands for the absolute. Or here you have another old Chinese text. And when you read all these texts, here got a German translation of a Japanese guy commenting on it. And here also you have kind of a circular diagram like this. For some reason, they all, how do you say? They don't correspond with each other. They, how do you say in English? Widersprechen sich. They contradict each other. So I've asked a lot of people to please explain it to me so that I can finally understand it without contradiction. And even after 40 years of Zazen practice, 30 years living in Japan, I still don't really understand it. What I understand is that it's an attempt to explain what the Hanya Shingyo says in only 2 lines. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, in a little bit more detail. For example, Dogen, in one of the first chapters of the Shobo Genzo, he gives his interpretation of the Hanya Shingyo, and there he says, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is nothing but form. Emptiness is nothing but emptiness. So in that case, it's four. And people say that form is nothing but form, means arriving in the relative. That's what Tozan means with his fourth rank. That would be form, is just form. While the third one, coming out of the absolute, that's emptiness and only emptiness. But then the question is, and where's the fifth one? In the case of Dogen Zenji's chapter, it's called Makahanya Haramitsu, it would probably be Prajna itself. Prajna itself is the fifth rank. And in the following lines, which I'm not talking about today, but next time we talk about the precious mirror Samadhi, Tozan, with very poetic words, tries to, well, explain the difference of these five standpoints, these five views on reality. One thing that's important is there is no, how do you say, it's not a step-by-step thing. So he's not saying that the second is higher than the first and the fifth is the best. But at least in theory, they're all, how do you say, not the same standpoint, but there's no more enlightened point of view and less enlightened point of view, but they're all just different views on the same landscape, so to speak. Okay, sorry if I caused you headaches, but if you have questions, things that you would like to share, please do so now. And the next time we talk about the precious mirror Samadhi, I will continue with the text. And also, what I showed you just in the beginning, this Gatha, I would also like to read the Gatha and then compare it with the text. Any questions, anything that you would like to ask or share? Joseph, please.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Very interesting. I don't feel like I have a headache. I feel like my head is kind of going like that. I needed to have been taking notes so I can go and do my homework before 2 weeks' time. So is this what in this text is called the essential and the contingent? Is that then you're saying analogous to emptiness and form in the Heart Sutra? And if so, is there any reason why these are using slightly different words or translated differently in these texts, or can we basically think of them as the same things?
I think so. I mean, of course, you can interpret the emptiness in the Heart Sutra in many different ways. And I think the Buddhists over the centuries have exactly done that. All came forth with their own idea of what emptiness stands for. But I think that, yes, exactly, emptiness is this one absolute reality, and form is the contingent reality of our lives. And they're not different from each other, but they're also not the same. The difference being that the one is contingent and the other, well, essential, as Bollitter says, absolute.
Yeah. And this symbol with the circle and the black and the white inside the circle, yes. It looks a bit similar, to my eyes at least anyway, it looks a bit similar to like the yin and yang symbol. Is there any relationship with it? Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a name for this symbol of a dot inside the circle and then?
Yeah. So I think the authors of this text, if it was Dongshan, was also inspired by that. Another strong influence is the, how do you pronounce it? I Ching, kind of these 64 hexagrams.
I Ching, yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of lines later, actually, Tozan is making a reference to the I Ching and 5 of those hexagrams. So, but then if you wanted to really, well, follow that through and try to understand why it's exactly these 5 hexagrams and not the other 59, at least I have to kind of surrender and say, I have no clue. I have no clue why it's exactly those 5 that he's choosing. But if you're interested and you want to kind of study before the next class, I recommend the book by Bolleter because he goes into all those details. He's also basically starting out with the two truths of Nagarjuna, the absolute truth and the relative truth, and what the Mahayana people made out of that. For example, Huayan philosophy that developed basically 10 manifestations of truth, and Zen, or these 5 ranks, being an attempt to reduce those 10 that you have in the Huayan to, well, 5 essential ones. But still, at the end of the day, my feeling is very complicated, and you also get the impression that maybe even the Zen masters of the old times, sometimes they had just too much time to think about stuff. Maybe somebody else was actually taking care of the fields, because otherwise I can't imagine how people could go so deep into theory.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share? Julian, please.
Yeah, just wanted to say, I found that really good, both the sitting and the talk today. But the word you used that I found particularly helpful was that collaborating. You know, that essential collaborating with the contingent and that sense of them working together. I've never thought, particularly with that word, that's just incredibly helpful to you know, regardless of the absolute details of the 5 ranks. That was just really helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else you would like to share? It's 1 minute to 9. So if there are no other questions, nothing else you would like to share, next time is the 23rd. So it's almost Christmas, but if that's no problem for you, I would be ready. Next time we would continue with Sawaki's quote to you. And on the 30th, almost year's end, but if it's okay for Xuanzang and the rest of you, on the 30th, we would continue with today's topic. Okay, Xuan? And after that, 2 times I'm gonna be away to collect arms. So I would like to take 2 times off at the beginning of next year. But 23 and 30, I will be here in Xuanzang's room, and then the next time would be the 3rd Monday of January. Okay, so thank you for participating. Sorry for, well, so much theory. Zen is not about theory, not about words, but that's how this text was written. Have a nice week, and see you again. Thank you, Xuanzang, for hosting us, and please send me the link later.